Blog Talk Radio.
Again, the second week in a row, guys. Your favorite fill-in guest.
There we are. That's right. What's up, George?
We got nothing much, man. How's it going? Pretty excited about the fight this weekend.
Yeah. Me too. This week we got, who do we got, George? Go ahead and break down our guest list tonight.
We have another good show, man. We always have good shows, but. We got Mike Dolce, who is in Montreal right now with Johnny Hendricks for his fight with Carlos Condit. Big fight. The winner of that fight's going to get the winner of GSP and Diaz. And, this card, I've been waiting for it for so long. I'm so ready for this fight. I'm ready for all these fights. So Saturday can't get here fast enough for me.
Right on, Mr. Matthews. Okay, well, let's just jump right to it. We have Mr. Dolce on the line right now. How's it going, Mike?
It is wonderful. I love being in Montreal, and I love being back on the BJPenn.com radio show. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for coming on, man. We really appreciate your time.
For sure.
What's the atmosphere like up there? It's a big fight weekend.
It is huge. I mean, anytime George St. Pierre fights in Montreal, it's a huge event, and I'm fortunate to have been here. I was here when he fought Koscheck, and I was here when he beat Sarah, when he fought Sarah, and now I'm here again. Here with Koscheck, I was here for Condit, and I was here for Sarah. Now I'm here again. It seems that I'm always working with an athlete on the GSP card, and fortunately, we are undefeated so far, my guys. So I'm 3-0 going into this fight, and I think Johnny's going to make it 4-0. And it's electric. The lobby downstairs at the Fighter Hotel is just constantly packed, and it's good vibes all around.
Excellent. Now, for our listeners who do not know, Mike is in Montreal with Johnny Hendricks. When he said Johnny, the last name is Hendricks. How's Johnny feeling for this fight? What is your assessment of your athlete going into this weekend?
Well, this is my fourth fight now with Johnny. I started with him prior to the John Fitch fight. So we went John Fitch, Josh Koscheck, Martin Kampman, and here we are with Carlos Condit. And this is the most prepared he's been so far. And if you look at his last three performances, I think he was pretty darn prepared for those also. Physically, everyone's commenting just how much better he looks now than he ever has, and this is the UFC administrative staff and just people seeing him around the hotel. So taking that criteria, taking the data his coaches has been giving us all fight camp, and just Johnny's general demeanor. I mean, he looks great. He smiles. He's happy. He's in the middle of a deep weight cut, and he just still feels great, looks great. So... all things point to a very successful night on Saturday.
Okay, great. Now, everybody knows who you are. You've built yourself a really good reputation for helping these guys cut weight and peak at the right time and do everything they need to do to go into octagon fight ready. With a guy like Johnny, how is the process with him, getting him to make weight and keeping him healthy and ready to fight?
There are a few challenges with Johnny. He's a really big guy for his weight class. I mean, normally he's a 210-pound guy without really trying very much. He doesn't look like it on TV as much. In person, I mean, he's a farm boy. He's got really thick, strong, dense muscle. He's got a really, dense skeletal frame, ligaments and tendons, with thick skin. I don't think I've ever seen him cut, really. So he's just this really massive, powerful, stocky guy. So for him to make 170, I mean, we're walking that fine line based upon, he could certainly fight as a middleweight based upon power and speed, but he doesn't have the leverage components, of height and reach and such. So 170 is a weight class he chooses to be in. But for him to get down to 171, 170, I mean, it takes every ounce of effort on the team's part to make sure he does so in the safest manner possible to ensure that career-defining performance the next night. But he's got a great team takedown. He has Mark Lehman as his head coach and jiu-jitsu coach, and Stephen Warman, I throw those names out there. there, and Adrian Ramirez, his strength coach, and Steven is his striking coach. He's got a great team, guys that are dedicated to him. They're full-time coaches with Team Takedown, which is a little bit different structure than some of the other athletes I deal with, where these guys are dedicated 40 hours plus per week to Johnny and to the other athletes on the team, and that really helps. I think it shows in the evolution of Johnny's his career. If you look back, he hasn't had that many fights in total. He's one of the less experienced guys, I think, at the elite part of the division, in elite sports. He's come so far, I think, because his work ethic is I don't think I've seen a better work ethic and dedication. And then he has the coaches constantly, molding him and pulling those skills out of him. With that said, getting him on weight is always difficult, but we always do it properly. We do it the right way. And then letting him get in the cage with all the skills that the coaches put into him, that's just fun to sit back and watch.
Awesome. Now, something I've always wondered with you, Mike, is you're known for getting these guys on weight, and that's like the moniker. If somebody has a problem with the weight cut, they want Mike Dolce. They want to enlist you. But is there any other items you address when you're coaching these guys, such as like the mental aspect, or even with game planning? Do you stretch yourself out over other areas of the fight with your athletes?
I do, and because of the Dolce diet brand, it's our registered trademark brand, and it's our book series and the black and gold T-shirt I wear. People think it's all diet, it's all about nutrition. It is part of what I do, but I think it's a small part of what I do. I'm a longevity advocate before anything else. I'm a coach, a performance coach, a lifestyle coach. I help the athletes and any individual. I help them get their mind right. I say we get all their houses in order, their mental, their physical, their emotional houses in order, which really becomes very necessary as you get closer to a world-class performance scenario. Guys like Johnny and Vitor Belfort, Chael Sonnen, they're competing at the elite level. They're competing at the Olympic level, and they're vying for that first place. I say the difference between first and last place in a 40-meter sprint or 100-meter sprint is literally a blink of an eye. There's no room for error. So what I try and do is I try and get in there with these guys and their teams and their families, and we try and cultivate the most efficient lifestyle for the athlete to fulfill their potential. That's what I try and do. I think what I do best is I remove all the blockages and all the obstacles, many of which are mental, many of which are external, environmental, and then, lifestyle was one I'm most famous for, which would be the diet, but also the training program, the periodization, the peaking. I'm a specialist when it comes to that stuff. So I think why my guys are able to make weight so well and be so healthy is not because of what we do during fight week. It's what we do for the previous 3-week cycles before that. I schedule everything in 3-week cycles, and I start focusing on an athlete 12-week cycles prior to competition. We get the periodization program, the peaking program all set up, and that's what I try and do with these guys. So, I say, I kind of, joke sometimes. If the athlete needs me scalping tickets in the parking lot the night of their fight while everyone's inside watching them compete, well, that's what I'm doing. Whatever the athlete needs, I'm the guy that's going to get it done for them, and that allows the athlete to compete at their best and be healthy and kind of move on in their life.
Excellent. Let me ask you this, Mike: is there one particular athlete that stands out that's been really hard to get his weight down? Is there like one more so than any others that's been really challenging for you to get their weight proper?
Johnny is a challenge because he's so big. He's a 210-pound guy normally. He said he was able to maintain a body weight of just under 205 for this training camp. Well, that's still 35 pounds. Johnny weighed in at 196 on Tuesday when we checked into Montreal, and everyone was like, wow, you look amazing. And he does. He's just massive and muscular. He's in great shape. That's a big dude, man. And Johnny's my height. He's 5'9", 5'10". So he's not an exceptionally tall welterweight. He's actually in the height range to be a lightweight. He's just got so much damn muscle on his frame. So Johnny is a challenge. Thiago Alves was a challenge initially when I first took him over, and now it's actually very easy to be with Thiago. In time, same thing with Vitor Belfort. when I first took over Vitor, it was very difficult for him to make middleweight 185. And then in time, we fast forward to what we did in Brazil. Vitor only cut 4 pounds. The weigh-in day, in Brazil, and everybody was, commenting on just how amazing his physique looked. Well, it's because he had been living properly for 2 years. And, they make statements, very, uneducated statements about, how he was able to look like that and just drastic difference. It was 2 years of work that culminated in that body and that performance. It wasn't nothing. It's nothing store-bought. It's nothing that you can just go out and pick up. You have to work hard. You have to live the right lifestyle. So I think with these guys, what I'm trying to do is I try and get them to focus on the long term. And when I sit down with them initially, it's like, listen, my goal is for you to live as long as you can, for you to extend your life and your vitality, your usefulness while you're here. By doing that, by making those lifestyle choices, the short-term stuff takes care of itself. If you're focusing on being 120 years old and being active during, all those 12 decades, well, immediately you don't have to worry because you're not running around killing your body, abusing it, polluting it. The short-term stuff kind of makes it easier. So most of the athletes are pretty difficult. Now, a guy like Nick Lentz, who, kind of famously, we dropped him from 155, where he was rather successful, to 145, and now he's, knocking on the door that he's ranked, top 8 as a featherweight, knocking on the door top 5. Nick Lentz is the ideal athlete. He does everything a coach requests of him. And he's he's a physical specimen. He's so gifted. So a lot of the guys are difficult initially, but Nick Lentz is one of the guys that he was turnkey. We just worked with him, and immediately his body responded. And what's funny about Nick actually is heavier in the off season on this lifestyle program than he was when he was competing at 155. So when he was competing at 55, he was walking around at like 168. Now as a featherweight, he's walking around at 173, but competing 10 pounds lighter, and says that these weight cuts are easier than when he was cutting at 155. That stuff really makes me proud, because that shows we're doing the right thing. This kid is finally healthy.
Amazing. What's the single most important thing somebody can do? Maybe not a fighter, but anybody listening to our show, to live a healthier lifestyle as far as how it pertains to your philosophy?
Well, I have the Dolce diet principles, and it's pretty much a 1 through 50 list, depending on how specific we're going to get. But we start with the first principle. If you can do nothing else, just principle number 1 is eat only earth-grown nutrients. That's real food. So now we're getting away from everything that's processed. No pills, no powders, no potions. Earth-grown nutrients. No matter where you are on the planet, you can look at your plate, look at the menu, and say, what's earth-grown? What's real? Well, I can eat that, and I'm going to be pretty damn healthy. Step 2, or rule number 2, is eat every 2 to 4 hours based upon what you just did and what you're about to do. So now we're eating only the highest quality nutrients. Step 2, we're eating them often enough to keep our blood sugar stable, to keep our metabolism moving, to keep our energy levels up, but not to, because we're eating what we just did, what we're about to do, we're not overindulging. If we have something coming up, we're not going to overindulge and be slow and sluggish. And number 3, we have to be accountable. We eat until we're satisfied, not until we're full. We're not eating until we're pushing ourselves away from the table. We're eating until we're satiated, we feel good, and we're stopping just before we get to that full point, so there's no bottleneck in your digestive system. It's very important. A lot of people don't realize that. Think about driving down the highway, and if you have to keep stopping at these bottlenecks and intersections, it takes so long to get where you're going. Now, if the streets are wide open, you can drive even slower and get to where you're going much faster, much more efficiently. These are some of the general universal principles. And it's that easy. And people say, because I have all this success with these elite athletes, that there must be something crazy scientific. The craziest thing I can say is it's common sense. I think Felice Herrig had said, rather famously, that Mike Dolce made eating real food cool again. And that is something that I agree with. I think that's freaking awesome. It's real food. It's none of this. There's no magic bullet. The magic bullet is patience and consistency and accountability. Common sense. That's the magic bullet.
Amazing.
Mike, I was going to ask you something going the opposite direction. you also have been working with Chael Sonnen for a while. He's not actually going down in weight. He's actually going the opposite direction. What's the difference when you're trying to get a guy to bulk up safely so that he still, retains his endurance, his speed, so that the other parts of his game don't change?
Yeah, and that's something we work on with performance factors. Now, a guy like Chael, he's a little bit different. When Chael was fighting at middleweight, he was 230-plus pounds in the off-season. That's a massive middleweight. That's a good-sized light heavyweight, and a lot of the heavyweights are walking around somewhere, and it's guys like Pat Barry, guys like Kane. They're walking around 230, 240. Well, that's where Chael's walking around now. Chael was up at 238, 240 pounds when we were filming The Ultimate Fighter. And I made this statement on Joey Diaz's podcast, The Church of What's Happening Now, and people started to just, flame me on the internet and, oh, Dolce, he's a liar, he makes up all this, bullshit trying to, hype his diet. I said it kind of innocently in conversation because I saw Chael on the scale that day, 238 pounds after a training session. I mean, I'm not trying to hype anything. He's just a freaking big, strong dude, with the proper frame to hold that. So what we did with Chael, we changed some of his training, more explosive work, more posterior chain, more the power muscles, posterior chain. It's the hamstrings, it's the glutes, it's the lower back, it's the upper back, the power, the explosive muscles. We focused more on those areas, and then we work in his performance factors. We make sure he keeps his agility and his flexibility. So as he gained a little bit more size and mass, we made sure his flexibility remained intact as when he was a middleweight. That was very important. A lot of athletes, they go through these bulking phases, but they forget about their flexibility or their reactive ability, which is very important. For me, reactive ability in fighting in MMA is the most important characteristic. I mean, a split second off in timing and you're knocked out. A split second on in timing and you're winning by knockout. So with Chael, that was very important. And when he fought, previously, people say, oh, he never won a fight in UFC at 205. Well, when Chael was fighting at 205, he was walking around at 202. He was just fighting at 205 because there was an opening in that division for him to get into the UFC, and that's why he was there. But he probably could have made 170 back in those days. He was walking around lighter than Johnny Hendricks and Thiago Alves at that point. Now he's walking around a true, legitimate light heavyweight. I mean, he could fight heavyweight if he wanted to.
So let me ask you this: do you think Chael is a better fighter, or will be a better fighter at 205 pounds than he was at 185 pounds? Is he better suited as a light heavyweight?
At this point in his career, yes, I do believe so. Chael's in his mid-30s now, and making those weight cuts. I mean, he outgrew the middleweight class probably 2 years ago. So, the work that he and I have been doing, going back to, the Brian, after he had that layoff, after he fought Anderson and almost beat Anderson, and then he had a long layoff. When he came back, his body changed. I mean, the time away from cutting weight allowed his body to catch up and, maintain a normal, natural, healthy body weight, which was near 230 pounds. So for him to fight at 185, he did the Brian Stan fight, he did the Bisping fight, then he went and did the Anderson fight. I mean, that was a lot of work. I mean, we're talking about 45-pound weight reductions in order to get him, to perform, and that's against the most elite athletes on the planet. So that was a lot of work. So him at 205 now, I think, is a great fit, where the weight cut is much more appropriate. Where 205 to he was up at the high 230s. Now most of his training camps, he's been in the high 220s. Now we're talking about a 20-pound weight reduction instead of a 40-pound weight reduction.
Can we expect to see, is his mixed martial arts game going to be a lot different, or are we just going to see the same Chael Sonnen, but a bigger, stronger, faster version of him?
Bigger, stronger, faster, and with tricks. Chael's been training with Vinny Magalhaes quite a bit now. That was over the last year or so. Vinny was one of the co-coaches on The Ultimate Fighter 17 with us. Vinny was working with Chael previously, before The Ultimate Fighter, and they've continued. They're actually training together right now. So I think having Vinny to train with on a daily basis, a weekly basis now, has really helped Chael transfer his elite wrestling to an elite submission wrestling game, which is something that really, shouldn't be overlooked, in the world of MMA, because wrestling and jiu-jitsu, they're so closely related with a few fine points. Once you kind of blend those finer points together, it just becomes one art in itself. I think Chael has blended that really well. Then these guys got striking coaches like Jamie Huey and Clayton Hires, who are out there keeping his striking good. And I think Chael's striking is good for the division. He's a better striker than some of the guys that are out there, but he's not the best striker in the division. We know that. He's the best fighter in the division, and that's what we want. That's what we need. I think he has enough strong points to beat every single person, especially and including John Jones at 205. So I do think we are going to see a bigger, faster, stronger, better conditioned, more resilient, and then he definitely has a few more tricks in his toolbox.
When you look at him now, and you've seen him at middleweight, and you see him going into this fight with John Jones, a lot of people, most people, are not giving Chael much of a chance in the fight. They're saying he was gifted this shot, he doesn't deserve it, and he is going to get beat soundly in the process, and we're just going to move on with the next light heavyweight contender. What would you tell those people that really aren't giving Chael a shot in this fight?
I'll take those bets. I think it's pretty good. 2-1 or 3-1 odds. I'll take those bets all day. You never count Chael Sonnen out. I think Chael, from what I've seen, from what I know, I mean, he's the favorite. If you guys, if the world, if the bookmakers were able to see what's going on in training camp, how he's looking, how he's performing, I think those odds would change really quick. But what they're doing, what most people do, is they look at his last year or so, his last fight, and they write him off as a result of that. They look at maybe some headlines, and they write him off as a result of that. But if you break down the fights, you say, all right, so Chael is 10 years older than John Jones. Chael is a much more accredited wrestler than John Jones, and that was John's strength. He would use his wrestling to allow his striking to come through. Well, John can't use his wrestling effectively against Chael. John's going to be really on the defensive when it comes to wrestling. And how is John going to be with his striking when he's constantly worried about Chael getting close, getting on his hips, getting his hands locked, on him? That's an issue. Chael's 10 years older, and it's the big brother mentality. Chael's been beating up guys like John Jones his whole life, his whole career, and that's the mentality we have going into it. He's going to beat the piss out of John Jones for 25 minutes no matter what. He's ready to go through the wars. I mean, don't forget, look at what Chael did to Nate Marquardt. Look at what Chael did to Yushin Okami. I mean, look at some of Chael's better performances. That's the Chael Sonnen that's stepping into the fight on April 27th there in New Jersey. I mean, it's going to be a nasty machine, and we're training Chael for 25 minutes of nonstop aggression, no matter what gets broken, no matter what gets ripped open, no matter what part of his body gets torn off, no matter how much blood is there, no matter how many bones crack. We are pushing him and training him to power through that, and I don't think John is prepared to power through that. John almost tapped when Vitor was playing with his arm. We saw John mentally start to break when Lyoto Machida put a little bit of heat on him and touched his jaw a couple times. John's never really had that big brother on top of him beating the piss out of him. I mean, Chael's going to walk across the cage and give John Jones a big old wedgie and freaking give him a noogie, and John's not going to be able to do anything about it. That's the type of fight we're looking for.
Amazing. What about, you made headlines, your name was brought up several times, Mike, when the UFC was trying to put together this Cyborg-Russi fight. And I know that we've heard your take on that. We've heard Dana's and Cyborg's and Tito's take on that. But just to touch back on that topic, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think Cyborg can actually make it down to 135? Like, in your expert opinion, can we touch on that?
I'll share with you guys what really no one's asked me the questions. Cyborg's camp, they reached out to me before any of this stuff. They reached out to me last fall. Would I be willing to work with Cyborg? Do I think I could get her down to 135? So let me meet her. I sat down. I met with her. I looked at her. We talked about her lifestyle, her training, her diet, her supplement program. I said, absolutely. What she was weighing, I think she was weighing 168 the day we sat down, and she hadn't been training. She was on vacation. She was handling business. She wasn't eating very well. She was 168 pounds. I said, well, listen, Chris, if I just get you on my diet, that 168 is going to pretty quick turn into 158. we start training pretty hard. That 158 is going to get down into the low 150s. We're going to touch the high 140s before we start the 3-week weight cut, 3 weeks before fight. Based on my experience working with elite athletes, and that's all I've done over the last decade, is I've worked with elite mixed martial artists, regardless of gender. I work with men and women. I did not see a problem. And she was great. We were on the same page. And then time goes by, and there's conversations back and forth. There's conversations in the media. And, my name gets brought into the headlines. I didn't mention this stuff publicly. Then my name gets brought into the headlines. And, Dana mentioned me, very flattering, and I appreciate it. And then Tito kind of, mentioned my name. And I don't know if it wasn't, necessarily good, but he was kind of incredulous as if it was even possible. Then they start saying, the doctor said it's absolutely impossible. Well, I tell you what, any doctor is going to say that it's not healthy to do it. I'm the first person to say cutting weight's not healthy. I'm the first guy to say it's not healthy. I've cut weight. I've cut 20, 30, 40 pounds in very short periods of time. I wish all athletes would compete at what I call their 3-week weight. 3 weeks before the fight, that's usually when they're in their best ever shape. I wish athletes would compete at that, but they choose not to. So what do? We have to find the best, the most healthy ways to get them where they're going. We offer suggestions. Ultimately, it's up to the athlete. So as time goes by, nobody from Cyborg's camp ever called me again. They never contacted me. They never brought me in for a follow-up. They never said, hey, Dolce, we're really curious here. Everyone else is saying it's not possible. Why do you say it's possible? And then I could have sat down and strategically said, well, here's what I would do. Here's what I see. Here's the trouble. Here's the flaws in what she's currently doing. And here's what I've done with when Chael Sonnen was 260 and I got him down to 205. Or not Chael Sonnen, when Rampage Jackson, before he fought Machida. He was 260 pounds entering that training camp. I got him down to 205, and we beat Lyoto Machida, who's a very tough former world champion. And that's a terrible matchup for Rampage, a southpaw who kicks and knees the body. That's the worst matchup ever for Rampage. 55 pounds overweight. Got him down, no problem, and he won a really tough fight based upon strength and conditioning. Weight cut was not an issue. You look at Chael making his 40-plus pound weight cuts, when he went out there and beat up Brian Stan and when he fought Bisping. The Bisping fight was a war. People say it wasn't the most exciting fight. It's because these guys were fucking so evenly matched. It was certainly a battle. Johnny Hendricks and Thiago Alves, both guys 40 pounds over. Dwayne Ludwig, we got him down over 40 pounds in less than a week to take a short notice fight versus Jim Miller after Christmas. I have the experience. I've been there. I've been in the locker rooms, let's say. I've been, in the trenches. I have some experience, and I was shocked that nobody from Cyborg's camp called me. And I reached out to Chris, and I said, hey, what's going on? And she said, I'm just waiting to hear from my management, Well, nobody ever called me. The UFC did call. They confirmed if I would be willing to help because I don't believe the UFC was pushing for it. It was part of the contract stipulation on Cyborg's side. They requested a specific amount of, money to pay for somebody like me, whether it was me or somebody else. They looked for an allocation of funds to allow her to make the weight drop. So the UFC wasn't trying to bring me in and forcing me on Cyborg. Cyborg's team asked for me. And then all of a sudden, nobody calls me again, and then they say it's just not possible.
Interesting.
It's interesting, and it's kind of I would at least like to have the conversation, or I would like to have nobody known that I was even involved because I don't want to be involved. I have more than enough athletes. I'm freaking busy. I'm here with Johnny Hendricks right now. I got Chael the following month. I got Vitor Belfort the following month. I'm busy with world-class pay-per-view main event guys. I don't need headlines from Chris Cyborg as much as I would like to work with her. I think she's a great athlete. I think it would be certainly spectacular. At 135, I do think she would be the world champion at 135. I just don't want to be involved in that kind of drama, gossip type situation, which, it was disturbing. And this is kind of the first time I'm actually speaking openly about it. I don't know what happened there. It was kind of a weird situation.
Interesting. Okay, now, Tito Ortiz, he comes out on Inside MMA, HD Next program, or Access TV now, rather, and it seems to be the recurring pattern with him that she wants to have children in her future, and that a drastic weight cut would inhibit her from doing so, or at least put her at risk to not be able to have children. So what is that just an excuse in your opinion, or is there some real validity to that?
I do not see any scientific basis for such a statement if the athlete, if the individual was following a healthy lifestyle protocol in the months prior to the weight cut. And that's what I said to Chris. We spoke in November talking about a February fight. And I said, Chris, you're 168 right now. We could have you on weight no problem for that fight in February. Let's do it. Okay, let's wait for my management. And a week would go by, then a month went by. Then it's the Christmas season. I'm like, wow, we just missed 6 weeks of proper lifestyle, of healthy living, of periodized training program, of an intelligent process. We're 6 weeks, and then all of a sudden it's the new year. Now we're in the January. Well, now it's fight camp time. Still possible, but now we're cramming. And then, the negotiations went, and then boom, she was off the table, and all this stuff was coming out. Now, mixed martial arts, MMA, any contact sport, any combat sport, any weight class restricted sport, there are inherent issues, safety issues, that the athlete chooses to undertake. With that being said, if the athlete is following the proper lifestyle in the months prior to the weight cut, it shouldn't be an issue. It wouldn't be an issue. And if it was an issue at any point, that's when we step in and pull the plug and we say, hey, the girl can't make weight. Sorry, guys, she's going to miss weight, and athletes do miss weight sometimes. If she can't make 135, she comes in at 138, well, that's the deal. And then the main event's off, but she preserves her health. Health is the most important thing. MMA and sport, it's just entertainment. I mean, it's awesome. It makes money for a lot of people. It's just, at the end of the day, it's just a fist fight. It's just entertainment. Nothing ever should jeopardize the health of the athlete. But if the health of the athlete is most important, I wonder why she wasn't following a healthy lifestyle months prior to competition. That's the question I would kick back to her management system and her health team, her medical team. Well, why wasn't she doing all the healthy things in the months and even years prior if now health is such a concern? And I'm a health advocate. I'm a longevity advocate. Ask any one of my athletes. First thing they say is, I feel healthy. For the first time, I feel healthy. Like Nick Lentz. This is the best I ever felt, fighting 10 pounds lighter than I've ever fought. I'm a health guy. And that's what kind of gets lost in all these conversations and all these headlines. It's just media fodder. And these publics, press releases and these big talking points. I don't care about that shit. What did she eat today? How many hours did she sleep? How hard is she training? Those are the questions that I care about. I don't care about any of the bullshit, any of the management, the media, the promotion. I don't care about that stuff. Chris, what time did you wake up this morning? What time did you go to bed last night? What did you eat? How hard did you train? How do you feel? Everything good at home? You're happy? You're in a good mood? Your family's all right? Mom's all right? Dad's all right? That's the stuff that freaking matters. But nobody was talking about that in her camp, it seems. They're all talking about money and money and opportunity, money and opportunity. What about the freaking health of this girl? And everyone's talking about her health, but it seems that nobody really cared about her health except for me.
Wow. How enlightening. Mike, I tell you what, man, I think we could have you on for our whole 2 hours. You have a lot to say, and it's really interesting stuff to hear from you.
After we get done here in Montreal, man, let's set it up. It's fun talking to you, fun talking to your audience. And you guys ask good questions, and these are things I like to talk about, kind of some of the more mundane, stuff that gets a little old, but these are good conversations. And, this is something, because my name's, with the Chris thing, I kind of thought about, even talking about it, but, you guys asked the question, and I'm going to be honest, I'm going to tell it, and my name has been mentioned in the media so many times by other entities and not me. It's time I actually did say something. Here's the deal. Here's what happened.
Excellent. Well, thank you for opening up to us, man. I really appreciate that, and we'll definitely pass the word on and get your voice heard through bjpenn.com without a doubt. Real quick, before we let you go, because we have Mr. KJ Noons up next. What is your prediction for the main event this weekend, UFC 158?
I think George St. Pierre is going to win. Now, how is he going to win? I'm not sure. If you look at the data, you would say GSP is going to win a decision. He's going to control the fight. If I was his Coach, I would probably, say that would be the A game plan. We would look for a few positions to stop the fight in, but I think that's just George's style, and you can't argue with a multimillionaire that has that type of style. Nick, you can certainly, never count Nick out. I'm a huge Nick Diaz fan. Actually, I'm a big fan of the Diaz brothers. I'm a big fan of Team Cesar Gracie. I like what those guys bring to the sport, but George St. Pierre, he's just been so untouchable for so many years. I honestly think the only guy in the welterweight division right now that is able to beat GSP is Johnny Hendricks for two reasons. Johnny's a better wrestler, and Johnny's a bigger hitter. If George can't take Johnny down, George has to stand with Johnny, and then what happens? Then he has to exchange with Johnny. Johnny will hit George, and George will get hurt.
Right.
That's just the way. And Johnny's my guy, and I'm biased. I know I'm biased. I know I love my kids, right? I know that's what I'm saying. But if you look at the stats, Johnny's a two-time D1 national champion, and he's regarded as one of the greatest wrestlers ever to come out from the legendary John Smith over there in Oklahoma. So that being said, what George is going to bring to the table wrestling-wise is not going to faze Johnny. He's seen it before. He's been in those positions tens of thousands of times. What does George do when he can't take Johnny? Now, George can take Nick down, and Nick poses some problems, submission problems on the ground. George trains with guys like John Danaher and Renzo Gracie and some other elite submission specialists. I think they're going to be prepared for that stuff. I don't know that Nick's ground game is any better than Carlos Condit's, who's very aggressive on the ground. Carlos came close, but he never pulled it off. That being said, GSP beats Nick. Johnny, hopefully, gets past Condit, and then we have a new champion at some point this year.
Excellent. All right. Well, best of luck to you and your team out there, Mike. And definitely, I'll be in touch after the fight. I'll try to get you on the show again as soon as possible. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on today.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it, and I look forward to it. And once again, I say it all the time, BJ Penn, the GOAT, greatest fighter of all time. BJ Penn is a legend. And I think he needs to hear that, and the people, we all need to be saying that. BJ's a legend in the sport. Certainly inspired me and inspired so many of the elite athletes I work with. They all have posters of BJ on their walls. So let's keep people talking about that too.
Right on. All right, Mike. Thanks again. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Bye.
Mr. George.
Always good to talk to Mike Dolce. That was some great insight from him with all those topics. I was wondering a lot of things, especially the cyborg stuff was really interesting. Tito had outright said body fat is too low. There's no way she can make it. And then here's the expert in that area saying that is not true. She absolutely can make it. And it really makes no sense that she hasn't been working.
Yeah.
To change her lifestyle. So
that's Mr. KJ Noons coughing in the background. We just connected him. He's our next guest. Excellent interview with Mike Dolce we just had. On to the next one. Mr. Noons, how you doing today?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good. How you feeling over there, man? I hear some coughing going on. What's going on with you?
Oh, just actually getting over the flu last week, so got a little workout in today and feeling a little bit better day by day.
That flu sucks, doesn't it, man?
Oh man, really, really nasty. Yeah, nasty stuff. I'm glad I'm up and moving, and I got a light workout today, so I'm feeling a little bit better.
Okay, good to hear. I was going to actually, when we connected you, I was going to introduce you as UFC lightweight fighter KJ Noons, but you kind of introduced yourself quick. I want to know, what's it feel like to finally fight for the Ultimate Fighting Championship? You have your first scheduled bout against Donald Cerrone coming up, and what's all that mean to you?
Yeah, I'm just really excited. I've been to a lot of the other organizations, and it's kind of come all full circle. So I'm really excited to get in there and compete against some of the great talent in the organization, and love the energy, the way it's run, and everything about UFC. So it's gonna be fun, man. I'm really excited. I can't wait.
Okay. Is it encouraging for you as a guy coming from Strikeforce to see the success of the other Strikeforce fighters that have made their debuts prior to you?
Yeah, definitely. I think the casual fan, probably didn't know that there's, other great fighters in other organizations that are ranked pretty high and can compete at the top level. So if anything, that probably makes the casual fan know that there's some really good fighters in other organizations that can compete with people in the top promotion. So but other than that, yeah, it's a good little streak going from the guys over at Strikeforce, and yeah, I'm excited to get in there.
Excellent. Was there ever any hesitation for you to make your UFC debut against a guy like Donald Cerrone, who is so highly touted in his own right and possesses so many problems to many fighters in the organization? Or were you just excited to go ahead and start at the top of the division and put your stamp in there right away?
I'll fight anybody. I think it just shows that the top guys in Strikeforce can compete with the top guys over at UFC. So I think he's a good fighter, and I think stylistically it matches up well against me, and yeah, I'm excited.
Okay. What about let's touch on your last fight real quick against Couture. I can go on record, and I'm comfortable with saying that I thought you won that fight. I think many people thought you won that fight. Is it a hard pill to swallow for you? I'm sure you thought you won that fight. Just give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I feel like I won the fight, but you can't leave it in the judge's hands. Even Dana White said I got robbed. So, what are you gonna do? You can't cry about spilled milk. I got to move forward and get better and move on to the next fight. It happened. The judges didn't give me the win, and there's nothing really I can do about it. So yeah, I feel like I won, but I got to get back in there and get better and show them how it's done on the next fight.
Yeah, absolutely. Where are you training right now? You're still training down in the arena, KJ?
Yeah, I'm down here in San Diego, and training with Jeff Clark down here in San Diego. So we're going to be bouncing around, hopefully get some different looks. And Pat Spate, Jeff Clark, should be good. Good camp. I like those guys. Did a lot of good work. And, yeah, I like it down here. It's where I live, so.
Okay. KJ, there's been a lot of, just to go in a little bit of a different direction, there's been a lot of guys recently in MMA, especially over the last few years, they've all been going to higher level boxing gyms and boxing trainer. So you're a guy that's come from a pure boxing background. You're definitely an expert in this area. Why is it that only now guys are gravitating to these higher level boxing coaches? You see now with Mayweather's gym, Freddie Roach. What is it about the now that's different than the last few years? Why weren't guys doing this before?
It's probably just like how these guys would search out the best jiu-jitsu guy or the best wrestler, and you got to be good at every aspect, every point of the game. So why not get the best kickboxing coach or the best boxing coach? So I'm guessing that's just getting a little bit more of the spotlight now, than before. But it's just like anything else. You got to be the best at everything if you want to be the best in the sport. So I'm sure that guys are reaching out there for the best stand-up, and just like the best wrestler and the best jiu-jitsu.
So like recently we saw that Freddie Roach is now working with Shogun, and one of the things on record that he said was that Shogun didn't know how to punch right. And this is a guy that's won titles in Pride, that is a former UFC champion. He's been in the top 10 for 6-7 years now. How is that a guy that has been a champion and has been a top 5, top 10 fighter for so many years? How is it that he can go so long and not know how to punch right, yet he's got so many knockouts and is always been highly touted as a great striker?
It's not boxing though. It's MMA. So you get a lot. There's a lot of things that you can get the basics of. Boxing. Maybe the basic of boxing is not the right punch correct, but like you said, he's knocked out so many great top fighters. It's not boxing. You can learn a lot of stuff from boxing. and incorporate into your style, but what he does, or what he's done over his career has worked for him and been great. And it's been his style, it's the Muay Thai, it's the wrestling, it's the everything, and you put that all together, it's 4-ounce gloves, so I mean it's not boxing, and he's been one of the best fighters I've seen in the history of MMA. I mean, back when he won Pride, and now he's UFC, so I mean. Yeah, you can get away with a lot, in MMA because there's so many, different weapons and like I said, the small gloves. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily going to help him better if he can maybe throw a right punch better. I mean, his style has worked for him great over the years.
Do you think that the boxing trainers that I've heard Mayweather say it, and you've heard Freddie Roach say it about mixed martial arts fighters, some of the guys that supposedly have the best boxing. Do you think that they don't necessarily understand the mixed martial arts game, and that's why they look at these striking styles and they're like, these guys can't hit?
I don't know about that. I don't think the guys can't hit. I think a lot of guys can hit. Like I said, that there's so many different factors in MMA, compared to boxing. It's not boxing, but you can compare. If you want to, you can compare how it is to boxing, or you can, compare boxing how it is to MMA. It's just two different sports. I mean, they're sort of the same, but they're not. I think a lot of guys in MMA can compete. Maybe not at the top level of boxing, but they know boxing. You have to know boxing to be, at least competitive or good in MMA.
While we have the subject of boxing up, KJ, I have a question for you. If it was KJ Noon's UFC champion, or KJ Noon's boxing champion of the world instead of UFC champion, which one would you rather? Which accolade would you rather have, to be a boxing champion or a UFC champion?
Well, how much does the top UFC champion make? What would you say? How much does the top UFC champion make? You guys know. Just spit it out. What?
They make a decent amount of money, but not on the level of boxers.
Oh no! How much? How much do you think? I mean, you got a General Park. How much does a UFC fighter champ make?
A couple $100,000 for the lighter divisions.
All right. How much does a top boxer make?
Yep, they're making 7 figures.
Pretty decent 7 figures.
Yeah.
So I enjoy both sports, man. I love them both. Either one would be great. I'll take either one.
Okay. Good answer. Fair answer. Do you ever wish that you would have continued on the trail with your boxing career as opposed to MMA, or are you happy right now where you're at with your career in combat sports?
No, I'm happy with my career in combat sports, and I love the way MMA is, it's gotten so big over the years. It's great. People are loving the sport, and it's exciting, man. UFC's done such a great job in front of the sport and doing so much with the show. So I'm happy where I'm at. I really enjoy MMA, and I like it.
Okay. Now, I remember I've been following you for a long time, KJ, and I remember a while ago, this was several years ago, you weren't content with just being an MMA fighter. You wanted to pursue boxing, and it kind of in some ways inhibited your MMA career by not being able to sign an exclusive deal to just fight MMA. What has changed? What has changed now from the past?
Boxing, there's just a lot of politics, a lot of politics in boxing. And the good thing about MMA also, too, is that, you can fight on the undercard or not be the main event and be able to make, a decent living and be able to pay your bills and be able to train all year long. Whereas boxing, if you're not the main event, even if you are the main event or even a champ, until you start getting that pay-per-view hits as champions boxer, it's just tougher to make a living. Whereas that's kind of the upside I would think of MMA. Maybe the heavyweight champ doesn't make as much as, the top boxing pay-per-view guy, but the money's definitely spread throughout the whole card, so guys can make a living.
Okay. Let me ask you this, KJ. Is the crowning moment of your career when you beat Nick Diaz in Elite XC?
I wouldn't say that's my crowning moment. Every fight I take, I train my butt off. So, every win, especially at this level, when you're fighting the top guys is a great moment for me. Competing at the top level, all these guys are so tough,
Mhm. Okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Pedro. I was wondering this when you were talking about the difference in people's games and things like that. Do you really feel like your jiu-jitsu and your ground game is severely underrated? Because people still, to this day, even with all, as many professional fights as you've had, and you've displayed your jiu-jitsu and your ground game in a lot of these fights, at least defensively for sure. And do you think that you're overlooked and you're underrated in that department?
I don't know about underrated. You can't really rate something that you've never seen. I just, I like to play defense, and, if I can use some type of offensive, submission or something for my advantage, I'll use it. But, I like to tend to keep the fight where I feel like I have the biggest advantage, and I feel like I have the better advantage when I fight fighters standing up, in the stand-up game. So that's kind of why I've always, stuck to that, and plus, for me, I feel like it's more exciting to be watching fighters stand up, and I think that's the majority of the people that watch MMA too.
I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you. Go ahead, Pedro. Sorry, was just curious about that while we were still on topic.
It's okay. We've seen you, KJ, a lot of knockouts, a lot of TKOs on your record, but glancing over your record in your recent fights, you haven't knocked anybody out since Jorge Gurgel in 2010. I want to know, does that bother you, and how much are you itching to just go out there and lay hands on somebody?
Getting a knockout is the ultimate way to win, fight. But a lot of times, if you're looking for the knockout, you also leave yourself open for different things, and it's at this part of the game. You're fighting. When I signed up, I only want to fight the top-notch guys, top of the food chain. So, I'm not fighting any slouches, and it's tough. You're top of the top guys. These guys, train just as long as you. So, of course, that's so that you go for, but you still have to. You gotta work for it. You can't always be looking for the knockout. It just you can get caught if you're doing that. So yeah, I would love that to happen. But you also leave yourself open for different stuff. So. I'd rather just work for it, and if the opportunity opens itself, then, yeah, I'll go for the knockout. But it's tough, man. Yeah, I wish I had more recently, but when you're competing at the top level, it's tough.
Okay. Now, do you think that after just taking what you just said right now, and after, let's say you're watching tape on your last few fights, do you see that something you can improve on? Because just from the outsider looking in, you are throwing heavy punches out there a lot of times. It seems like you do look for the knockout, when you're fighting with these guys. And is that something that you're looking to change, or am I just assessing it wrong?
No. There's some opportunities I probably could take advantage of during fights, but like I said, if you go for something, then you might be able to be taken advantage of. So I look back and I try to definitely get better at my cans and work on those things. So. The ultimate goal is to win decisively every round and eventually, push an opponent to knock them out. But it's tough, this at top of the division, and all I can do is get better, during the camps, and hopefully, get that outcome after the fight.
Okay, excellent. Let's go back full circle. Let's get back onto Donald Cerrone a little bit. What are your thoughts on this guy, and how do you see this fight playing out?
I think stylistically it's going to be a great fight. I think he's a really good fighter. He's one of their top fighters at UFC, and I'm excited. I'm excited for the challenge, and he's just good all around. And we'll see we're going to work really hard in the camp and see what we can expose, on him and be able to take advantage and get the win. Hopefully knockout.
Okay. Do you see the fight taking place on its feet? Because, this guy, he has a really flashy kind of nice style of Muay Thai, kickboxing, and you're primarily boxer. So would you like to go ahead and go out there and trade? Is that your like instinctual in your mind game plan going forward?
Are you breaking up a little bit? What's to do what with him?
Oh, do you anticipate a stand-up fight with Donald?
I mean, pretty much all my fights are stand-up, so we'll see. I definitely want to put it where it's my biggest advantage. A lot of people say boxing. I've had, I think, 14 pro boxing fights, but I've also had, I think, 15 pro Muay Thai and kickboxing fights. I won my first pro amateur, intercontinental world title or an intercontinental title of Muay Thai when I was 17. I've been doing Muay Thai for a long time. I just had a lot of injuries, broken foots, and some bad injuries where I haven't been able to kick lately. But I would consider myself, a pretty decent kicker, having a good background. Anything. But for my camps, it's not like I just train to just do boxing and just kickboxing the whole time. If anything, I'm trained for all the other stuff more than that, the grappling, the takedowns, the takedown defense, the submissions, The perfect world for me, I just love to just work boxing and kickboxing all day long. And hopefully that would play out for the fight, but that's usually not the case.
Okay. Let me ask you this, KJ. I don't remember when it was. This was like probably 7 or 8 years ago. You won the Pride Fighting Championships, like the Best Striker audition or something of that nature. I want to know what was that whole series like for you, and being crowned that, given that accolade. What was that like for you?
Oh man, it was excellent. I think it was about 9 years ago. I think maybe 8-9 years ago. Pride was the biggest organization. They were bigger than UFC at the time, and they was just starting to come around. And I had won by accident. I just went up there to visit some friends in LA, and I just entered for fun, and I won Best Striker. And then all of a sudden I was signed with Pride. I didn't even know what Pride was. I just come from kickboxing and boxing, and it was cool, man. I got to learn under Matt Hume. When they flew me to Seattle, I lived up there. I learned the whole MMA game. My first training partner ever was Sakurai. And, I lived with him. We trained for months. And I really, got to learn the game. And, I had a few fights under the Pride banner. And then they were like, all right, now go to Japan and fight Gomi. And I was like, I was more educated by then. I was like, I only have 3 fights. He's pretty good. He was a world champ at the time. Like, I think I'm going to just get a little bit better at this MMA thing. And so, I just concentrated on a few boxing, kickboxing, worked on MMA, and then, kind of come full circle. Now here I am 9 years later, in the UFC. So, yeah, it was a cool experience, man.
Yeah, what an interesting story. So winning that, getting named Best Striker, that pretty much sets you on your MMA path, if I'm understanding that right. Is that correct? I have terrible service. I just have terrible phone service. But what was that? I'm saying, I said that's a real interesting story. The winning the Best Striker from those Pride auditions, that pretty much sets you on your MMA path and kind of changed your life, if I'm understanding that right. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, most definitely. It's just funny how things come in your life. It was by accident. All of a sudden I was doing MMA, and now here I am. Be able to make a living, pay my bills, and now I'm setting stage here on one of the biggest organizations. UFC gets a fight here to come this summer, so I'm really excited. It's definitely been a blessing.
Amazing. All right, KJ. I won't take up too much more of your time today. I want to know one thing real quick. Who you're picking in the main event? You fought Nick Diaz before. You fought him twice. Do you think he has what it takes to take out GSP this weekend?
I think he has what it takes to win, but I think GSP is just too dominant on the ground. Just a bigger, stronger, he's going to dominate on the ground. It's just going to be so hard for him to get up or really do anything, you know. Even if you have good jiu-jitsu, a guy that's dominant, it's going to be tough. So it's going to be a tough one. I'm going to have to say JC's going to take that one, even though we all want to see Nick talk a bunch of shit and beat up GSP. You know, it'd be fun, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Okay. Excellent. All right, KJ. Well, best of luck in your preparation for your fight. Hopefully we'll be able to get you on one more time before fight night. And take care of that cold, man. Get better, and thanks for coming on.
All right, guys. You guys have a good night. Take care.
All right, you too. Thanks. Mr. Matthews.
That was KJ. You know, he sounds a little bit under the weather there. You know, I felt almost bad dragging him through the long last questions there. But
he did good. He did good. You know, before we got on the air, we were talking about. I mean, I've been working with KJ for a number of years now, and I've never even heard him so talkative. Like I was really surprised. He really came out and he was giving like in-depth responses, and I was pretty surprised. I thought we might have to pull some teeth.
Yes, well, especially he does. You know, he really sounds under the weather there, but he's about to have one of the biggest fights of his career. I mean, definitely. This is a big fight, UFC debut, and Dolce, despite the knockout loss to Pettis, don't sleep on Dolce. That's going to be a tough fight. You know, Cerrone's going to come in there ready to bang. That guy fights. You know, he fights and wants to go out on a shield. You know, he typically doesn't give a shit. So I think that's going to make for a good fight stylistically. That's going to make for possibly fight of the night. I mean, those guys they can put on the war. You know, KJ doesn't go away easy. And before, Cerrone went down to Pettis with that kick, most people would say Cerrone is in it for the, from bell to bell also. I mean, he had a war with Nate Diaz. They're both pretty battle tested. I think it's going to be a great fight. And, KJ can bring a lot of excitement to that division. You know, he's been on the end of a couple of really tough decision losses recently, and I think that people forget that this guy is, he blasted Nick Diaz. He's blasted a bunch of guys. He's hurt a lot of guys. He went 5 rounds with Nick Diaz after that, and he was still tagging Diaz throughout that fight. So it's definitely, he's a tough guy, and it's going to be a good fight. Definitely going to be a good fight.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of KJ, and what I found interesting, and I wish we had more time to talk to him, but we kind of jammed through these guests, within 30 minutes or under 30 minutes. But that whole thing where he was discussing how he won the Best Striking Pride Trophy, and that really set him on his MMA path. I mean, I think that's a big story that's kind of patched up by a lot of people. I thought that was really cool. I would have liked to talk to him more about that. Saying his first MMA sparring partner in his life was Sakurai. I mean, the guy has a story. It's pretty cool.
Oh, that was actually very interesting. The fact that he was asked to fight Gomi. KJ is still very young in his MMA career now, and it's 2013. The fact that they wanted him to fight Gomi back then is insane. Gomi is doing well in fights now, let alone back then. He was, one of the best in the world at that time, if not was the best in the world at that weight class during that time. So, the whole story is very interesting, and it kind of brings you back to a time, when Pride and the UFC, and it's crazy to see how many guys almost went that direction, and how everything does come full circle.
Yeah. Okay. So far, so good tonight, huh?
Oh, not very, very good. And we still have Ben Askren to go, and Ben has been on the tear in the last 24 hours. It seems like. So we'll see what he has to say. Especially, we had Alan on last week, and Alan had a lot to say about Michael Bisping, the whole bet, and everything that's going on with that. And I'm, Ben, the one thing I always love about Ben is that he cuts to the chase and he shoots it straight. He tells you exactly what's on his mind, and he doesn't pull any punches. He doesn't bullshit. So, I really respect that about the guy that, he doesn't really give a shit what anybody says. He says what he feels, and, doesn't care about the politics in between, whether he's talking about GSG, Dana White, Olympic wrestling, or Michael Bisping.
And he's a phenomenal fighter. He's the Bellator welterweight champion. He can't be beat. Nobody has been able to figure out his riddle. So outside of his personal demeanor, he's also a fantastic, phenomenal athlete. I'm going to let you introduce him, George, because we have him on the line right now, I think.
Well, yes, we're going to bring in Ben Askren, Bellator welterweight champion, undefeated. How you doing today, Ben?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thanks for
Ben, you've been. We'll just get right into it. We had Alan on last week. He's got a big fight with Michael Bisping coming up. You had a funny exchange with him yesterday. What prompted that exchange?
Yeah, I just, obviously I'm good friends with Alan, so, he was making those excuses about Belfort on Thursday, which, okay, that's bullshit. So, actually, Bisping's actually right about that one. It's kind of crap that Belfort's on the testosterone replacement. So, he's actually right about that one. But I cut to it. I said, Alan's not juicing, so what are you going to do when he knocks you out? What's your excuse going to be then? And he didn't like that very much.
Yeah, he didn't sound very appreciative of those comments. But he did retort a couple times. He made a couple of comments. Of course, everyone goes after your hair, and he made a couple of comments about Bellator. How do you respond to when he makes comments like that? What do you think about when he says, "Oh, well, go back to the minor leagues," and makes comments about Hector Lombard fighting there? What do you think about it when he says things like that?
Oh, I'm not too worried about it. I'm pretty secure in my skill level, and I know how good I am. So when he goes on that, it doesn't even bother me.
Let me ask you this. I'm sure you've been helping Alan prepare for this fight. You guys are very close, been training for a while. When you look at Michael Bisping's game, is there anything that stands out and impresses you?
Well, I'm not really helping Alan that much for this fight because I just don't think there's going to be too much wrestling to it. Michael Bisping actually has some pretty decent wrestling defense, and he's kind of annoying to hold down. So for Alan to try and take him down, it really wouldn't be worth it. And I don't think Michael Bisping has what it takes to take Alan down. So, I really see this fight happening almost exclusively on the feet.
Okay. So you really think that the fight will just be 100% on the feet? Do you think that if Alan starts getting the better of the striking exchanges early on, that Bisping will be running for the takedown, or do you think that he'll just battle it out and go out in the shield on his feet? What do you think about how it's going to turn out?
Well, I'm not really sure. I didn't say he wasn't going to go for the takedown. I said he wouldn't be able to get the takedown. So, I don't think Bisping will be able to take Alan down, and I think Alan's going to win in the stand-up, and so Alan's going to have no reason to try to take Bisping down. So, I really see it all being on the feet, and I see Alan winning that.
That's very, again, it's a big fight for him. He's got both guys have a lot on the line on this. Realistically, with the way guys have been getting cut from UFC, do you think that any of these guys could be on a chopping block? Both guys, the division's wide open right now. Weidman was reluctantly given a shot against Anderson Silva, and really Hector Lombard just lost. Yushin Okami has already faced Anderson Silva twice and lost. It looks like a wide open division if a guy can just make a move. Both guys have a lot on the line. Is that something you think guys need to worry about going into fights like this?
I don't think either of these guys have any chance of being cut. I mean, Bisping's been a cornerstone of the UFC forever, and he's a number one British fighter. And they need British fighters because hell, Hardy lost like 5 in a row and he didn't get cut. So they're clearly needing to keep those guys around. Alan, before the Okami fight, he was on a streak. I think he won 6 or 7 with the only one going against him was that questionable Akiyama decision back in, I don't know, 2009 maybe. You know, it was a while ago. So Alan was really on a roll. Plus, he's an exciting finisher. He finishes the majority of his fights. So neither of these guys I don't think they're worried about their jobs at all. But with it being an open division, yeah, whoever gets the win's going to, step way up. I think Bisping's ranked 5th and Allen's 11th. So whoever gets the victory here is going to definitely take a shot, step closer to the shot.
Okay. Ben, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
You fight for the second largest MMA promotion in the world, Bellator. And I think that over the years, Bellator's strategy has become more and more apparent, and that's just kind of like slow and steady pace, growth through time. And you've been their champion for a while now. I want to know, how do you feel the Bellator promotion is doing as a whole, and especially with the added bonus that they're now on Spike, and the ratings are showing, improving from when they were on MTV too?
Yeah, their ratings shot way up. And, I think Bellator is doing great. Obviously, they're on, Bellator 90. No other promotions made it that far besides the UFC. So Bellator has already been in it longer than, anyone except the UFC. So they've already obviously, if their company ended today, you could call them a success. But, I think they're really starting to gain some momentum right now. Moving over to Spike, the ratings went not just up, way up. It went from 200,000 to 900,000. So
right.
It went way through the roof. I think they're signing better people all the time. And, being on Spike, that's key. Everyone's going to be able to get paid a little more money, which makes it more interesting because they can sign more people.
Right. Do you believe in Bjorn and the guys behind him? And are you happy as a Bellator champion, 100%, or is there ever any part of you that wants to make a switch to UFC one day?
Bellator's been great to me. I have really zero complaints about Bellator. I've been their champion forever now. Obviously, my first fight in Bellator was Bellator 13, I think, or it's been a while. I think Bjorn's doing a great job bringing the company along.
Okay. Let's just say, and I'm not trying to pitch you against your employer at all. I'm just speaking in pure hypotheticals. Let's just say that there was buzz and the UFC wanted you. Is that ever an option to go over there and fight the guys like GSPs and the Nick Diaz and the Carlos Condits? Those are the guys that really have the star power in the welterweight division. And would you as a competitor, to get an opportunity against those guys one day?
Yeah, obviously, there'll be a point when my contract's up with Bellator, and Bellator is, either going to have to put up or shut up. They're going to have to put their money where their mouth is, and it shows that they're a legitimate threat to the UFC. And then at that point I'll be a free agent. And obviously I have loyalty to Bellator because I've been there forever. But a part of me still wants to see who the best, if I'm the best in the world. And I think I can and will make a legitimate claim to that eventually.
Okay. And what are your thoughts on the whole Eddie Alvarez situation? Because it's basically the same topic. The Bellator has to put up or shut up. And if the UFC comes in and offers you a real creamy deal with good signing bonus and pay-per-view points and gives you an Eddie Alvarez type offer, what happens? Because Bellator, they're not letting go of Eddie, and they probably, if the same thing happens with you, they probably wouldn't let go of you either. So what do you do? And what are your thoughts on that?
That's not my situation. That's my manager's situation to work that out, and hopefully Bellator is going to keep Eddie, and I don't know the specifics of that deal. I have no idea, and so if they match the UFC and they got matching rights, then it sounds like they did what they needed to do, and Eddie needs to start fighting. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not a manager, I'm a fighter, so who knows? I don't know what's going to happen.
Okay. Sorry we dropped your call, man. That was weird. But I got you back on. We're live still, so.
Oh, okay. I tried calling back, and no, it didn't have anything on there when I called back.
Yeah, sorry about that. I think we just had a little bit of technical glitch. But
okay. Let's do it.
Yeah. Okay. So let's repeat that last question. The Eddie Alvarez situation, as it pertains to you. You know, thoughts, concerns.
Yeah. Like I said, you know, that's my manager's job. That's not my job. You know, if Bellator has matching rights and they match the offer, then they do what they need to do, and you know, that's how it goes.
Do you really feel like it was it really a match of pure or pay-per-view points? Do you feel like that should be counted towards something?
Well, I see the whole deal, so you know, unless I can review it point by point, you know, I honestly, at this point, all of us are just guessing because none of us have really seen it. So, you know, I have no idea what that deal really said.
Let me get away from this for a second, and Ben, your last fight, you know, a lot of people have said, oh, well, Ben, he takes people down, he's holding guys down, but the last fight, you unleashed a barrage of vicious ground and pound.
Yeah.
If anybody thought that you didn't do any damage on the ground, they definitely know you do some now. I mean, you were landing heavy shots, and it was a crimson mask and a bloody mess in there. What's the evolution of Ben Askren on the ground and pound now? What changed from fight to fight just like that?
Yeah, I mean, that's really. It was just a matter of time, and I told everyone. But, I mean, when you think about it, when I started fighting in Bellator, I've been fighting for 1 year, literally 1 year. So, you know, I wrestled my whole life. I picked up jiu-jitsu fast, but the striking took a little time to kind of sink in and fit with me. So I told every single person who wanted to listen that it was only a matter of time until I started hitting harder, until I started hitting more accuracy. And I just made that prediction come true. And, you know, from here on out, it's only going to get better. It's only going to get harder. And, you know, I'm working every day with some of the best striking coaches in the world, so I'm going to get better.
So are we going to see, is the next step Ben Askren, are you going to be looking for a knockout, or are you always think that, you know, you're going to put guys where you have a really, really decided advantage, and that's on the ground, you on top of them, passing their guard and landing heavy shots?
Yeah, I'm gonna take them down, pass their guard, beat them up. You know, maybe I don't pass their guard sometimes, and I'll just beat them up. I'm gonna do what I do best. That's what great athletes do. They do what they do best. You know, if you were the Vikings and you got Adrian Peterson, are you gonna pass the ball? No, you're gonna give it to him 25 times and let him get 150 yards, right? So. I'm not going to stop doing what I'm doing. Obviously, I'm going to continue my evolution as a fighter and get better. But until someone shows the resources to be able to stop my takedown, I'm not going to stop doing it.
I have another question for you, Ben.
Yeah.
What do you think of John Fitch's recent UFC release?
Ooh, interesting.
I mean, yeah, this is a guy who has a really impressive, one of the best records in the UFC. But he's been labeled as like a boring fighter. They call him, like, I've heard him called Smoke Break. I've heard him called the Blanket. You know, but in the sense of true sports, I mean, he's a winner more than he's a loser. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, the funny thing about that is his 2 fights before he got cut, he had fight of the night against Eric Silva in Brazil. So, you know, I think there's kind of a bad blood between him and the UFC for a while. I think maybe, you know, going all the way back to when he wouldn't sign the video game deal. Remember?
Right.
They cut him for like a day or 2 days, and then they brought him back. I think there's kind of always been some bad blood there, and obviously he's getting paid a crap ton of money, and that probably had something to do with it. But, you know, I don't know. That's like I said, I'm a fighter. That's Dana. That's his business to run. Would I have made that move? No, probably not. But it's his business.
He signed the World Series of Fighting. Was that a fight you thought, hey, maybe I'll get that fight in Bellator? That would be a big fight for you It's a top 5, top 10 guy. He's been there for a long, long time, highly regarded. Is that somebody that you thought, wow, they thought him, this is still a top guy. I need to get this fight. Is that one you want?
Well, John and I are managed by the same person, and I've known him. I've been up there at AK and trained a few times. So, I was fairly indifferent. I figured if he signed with Dolce or whatever, I'll fight him. But it wasn't someone like who I dislike and who I look forward to fighting. So I didn't really have those feelings about him. Hello?
Sorry, you were cutting off for a second there, Ben. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, I said John and I are managed by the same person, and I've been up at AKA a handful of times, and so I know John, and I got nothing against him, and so that wasn't one of those things like when Nate Marquardt got cut for juicing the third time, that's the cheating good right there, that I would have been excited to fight him. It was kind of more indifferent, if it happens, it happens, if it doesn't, it doesn't, oh well.
Moving forward to this weekend, you're a champion of Bellator. You're a top welterweight in the world. A lot of welterweights. It's a stacked welterweight card this weekend. These are a lot of guys that many people want to see, you fight, and guys that you're looking forward to fighting. What do you think about these fights this weekend? When you break down the main event, a lot of people just see GSP taking down Diaz or superior wrestling. What are your thoughts on that main event, and what are your thoughts on GSP, his wrestling advantage over his opponents and Diaz?
Yeah, I see that happening. I think it'd be awesome if Diaz won. I think that would shock the world, and that would be exciting. But I think the chances that happen are relatively small. Diaz doesn't really have the power, and I don't think he's going to be able to stop the takedown enough times to stay on his feet long enough. So hopefully it'll be an entertaining fight. Hopefully we're not sitting there twiddling our thumbs watching GSP hold him down. That being said, I think the guy there that is dangerous for GSP is Johnny Hendricks. Because Johnny Hendricks would probably actually stop, a good majority of GSP's takedowns. And I think we saw that when GSP was kind of reluctant to fight him when Diaz got the title shot, because Diaz was coming off a drug-related suspension off a loss and get the title shot. That has never, ever happened in the history of the UFC, probably any fighting promotion, where a guy comes off a loss and off a suspension and gets the title shot. But I think that was the fight that GSP wanted, because it's definitely easier, less risky.
So the other fight, and there's big implications on that fight is Carlos Condit and the guy you just mentioned, Johnny Hendricks. When you break down that fight, do you see it looking the same way? Condit, again, a good striker, moves around a lot, is known for having an active guard, but Johnny Hendricks is extremely strong and talented wrestler, and he's got big power on the feet too. He's very dangerous. When you break down that fight, do you see that cut and dry also, Johnny just being too much for Carlos, or do you think that it's going to be a tough fight and that it could go all three? And how do you break that down?
I see Johnny winning it fairly easily. I think he's just too powerful. I think if he wants to take him down, he'll take him down whenever he wants. And Carlos Condit's jiu-jitsu really isn't that dangerous. So, with Hendricks having a strong wrestling background, I would be shocked if he was getting swept or submitted or anything like that. So, yeah, I think it's a fairly easy fight.
Everybody's talking about Johnny Hendricks now, and I think a lot of people are excited to see a possible showdown with GSP and Johnny. Let's say if you were to fight Johnny, what would your strategy be going into that?
I would love to fight him. He actually beat me all the way back in high school, so we're going back a good 10 to a dozen years now or so. He beat me, and I've always been wanting to get another shot at him. But right when we were done with our college careers, we wrestled weights that were right next to him. He didn't continue freestyle wrestling. He went and fought. And I continued wrestling through the Olympics, which was a year and a half, 2 years. So I've I've always wanted to get another shot at him for the last 10 years or whatever it's been now. I think it would be an interesting matchup. Obviously, he's got a lot of power. You got to watch out for that. But I definitely think I'd be able to out-grapple him.
Interesting. Okay. Are there any other like Ben Askren grudge matches out there that we may not know about? Because that's the first I've heard of Johnny Hendricks. Maybe I'm late on that. But are there any other similar scenarios for you in the MMA world?
Not really. I can't think of any. I mean, there's a lot of people I kind of don't like, but no one that I really dislike to the point where, they stick out in my mind.
Who is the when you look at the Bellator roster, they've got a lot of guys. They're always signing new guys. When you look at the roster, which name sticks out to you? You're like, well, that's going to be the fight. That's a fight that needs to happen. This is the one I'm excited for. This is the one the fans want to see. And which one? What are you looking forward to?
I really think the only guy with any kind of chance to beat me is Lima, and I already beat him 5 rounds to 0. But the fact is, he's a very dangerous striker. He can knock people out with one punch, whether it's punches or kicks or whatever. So he's the most dangerous guy on the roster by a long ways. I feel like. I do think Ben Saunders matches up well with him to where Ben Saunders could win that fight potentially, but. For me, he's the most dangerous guy.
Interesting. Alex, so did you have anything else for Ben?
I think we're good, Mr. Askren. Unless you have anything you want to say.
Nope. Thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you for coming on, and good luck in your future fights, Ben. Thank you very much.
All right. See ya.
We had a little mishap there with a technical difficulty. At least we got him back on the line over there. That's what happens in a live show. So, I hate losing the momentum of the guest because Ben is such a good guest, and he will expand on a lot of different topics in mixed martial arts, not just his opponents. He'll talk about the whole division. He'll talk about guys, the weight class above him. He doesn't care, and that's. Again, I have a lot of respect for him like that. He really will, he really will fight pretty much anybody, and he's making big strides for a person that's so young in his MMA career. He really doesn't have that many fights, and that last fight, I think it was eye-opening to a lot of people. Here's a guy that he's got 11 professional fights. He comes out there and people really didn't expect to see the vicious ground and pound that they saw that night. They didn't expect to see that from him, and I think he put notice on the division and let people know that he's for real and he's not there to lay on you. He's there to put his hands on you, and he's going to do some damage. If ground and pound keeps on developing, it could be a lot of problems for people because the takedown. People can't solve that puzzle with him. It's just too much lately.
Yeah. What I want to know is two things from you, George. One is how could you let us completely go off the air while you're manning the switchboard and lose Ben Askren? And two, I don't know if you realize this or not, but you called me Alex on the air instead of Pedro. So I want to know how that happened.
Well, the switchboard thing, I can't give you an explanation for it. I wish I could. The Alex thing, I can give the listeners an explanation for, okay? Because if a lot of people don't know this, but I've known you for a long, long time, before mixed martial arts, before we were involved in any of this, and that's just, that's what I know you by, Alex, and, it's not, both are your names, but, that's just one. I decided to call you Alex. I believe that when we were in Vegas for BJ's fight, I looked at you, at the pre-fight party, BJ's pre-fight party, and I called you Pedro, and you looked at me and you said, "You just called me Pedro."
Yeah.
I just did. But that's because I look, JD, everybody's calling me Pedro, and I say, even, you look at me like, why don't you call me Pedro? I don't know. It's just everybody else did it. So, again, force of habit, there's a backstory to the listeners. I'm sure none of you cared, but that is the story.
Yeah, very interesting stuff. We had a good show today, I think. I really liked having Mike Dolce on. I was really sincere when I said, man, we could have this guy just on for 2 hours straight and just, run the show.
He's like a fountain of information.
I know.
He knows everything when it comes to. There's some good insight that he's not just a nutrition guy. He has a multifaceted talent that he brings to the camp. He brings a lot more there, and I think that's why a lot of people seek him out for help. He's really helped a lot of guys, and it kind of speaks for itself. Vitor Belfort, say what you want, but he hasn't looked better in recent fights. He's been an absolute killer, and you can attribute that to whatever you'd like. But there's no question that Mike Dolce has been part of that.
Yeah. Mike's the man. I really like talking to him.
Yeah, for sure, Mike is the man.
All righty. Well, we're down 2 shows now, Mr. Matthews.
Yeah, but, besides the technical glitch, which, again, we have no control over it, I've seen it happen, on pretty much every MMA podcast that's occurred on Rogan's podcast. It's happened probably a dozen times where it cuts out, we're a live show, and, everything is organic. So if the building collapses where I'm at right now, the show will go off the air too. Okay, you never know what's going to happen. We're live streaming, so shoot from the hip.
Right on. All right, so we'll be back next week, maybe, right? Definitely. Yeah. The show will be on next week, and we'll probably host it again. What do you think? Up for one more and see how it goes?
Yeah. I guess we'll just keep on plugging away and see how we do, huh?
You know what they say, if you want something done right, do it yourself.
Do it yourself.
Yeah.
I hear you. But another good show, man. It's good talking to everybody. Definitely good talking to you.
All right, Georgie. Well, let's go off the air. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Tune in next week, same time, same place. We're done, George.